Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. I'd love to know. And if you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, let's jump in.
The desert winds of Zephyr Prime had always been silent, brushing over endless dunes and buried secrets. For centuries, the old empires believed they had wiped the slate clean. That humanity, fierce and unpredictable, was gone. Their last screams had faded into static, their warships left to rot beneath red suns, their flags burned and forgotten. The galaxy moved on. History recorded the fall as a necessary end, a tragic but useful cleansing. And then, one day, the sand began to shake. Not like a storm, not like erosion, but like something underneath was breathing. At first, the locals blamed it on tectonic drift. But the rumble had rhythm, a beat, a pulse, like a heart. Out in the barren wastes, a ridge split open without warning. Cracked stone and metal groaned as something ancient pushed its way upward. The Watchers came running. Dominion scouts, Empire scientists, all staring at the strange black shape rising from the dirt. At first it looked like scrap, the shell of a lost vessel or a mining structure twisted by time. But it wasn't scrap. It was smooth, sharp, designed. And then it lit up. One long blue line blinked alive down its side, and the sound began. Not a message, not a language, a tone. Deep, powerful, and impossible to ignore. Communication towers shorted out. Translation systems crashed. The signal was too old for modern tech, but the message was clear. A single phrase, cracked and ancient, spoken in the tongue of a dead world. "We rise." Silence followed, then panic, because the voice was human, unmistakably human. And if there was still a human voice left to speak, then maybe the war wasn't over after all. Panic rolled through the observation stations of Zephyr Prime like thunder across a dry plain. The Dominion's communications outpost, nestled high in the cliffs of the glass spine, erupted in activity. Lights flared red, alarms screamed, and still the strange signal pulsed through every channel. Slow, steady, confident. "We rise." 3 words. That was all it took to shatter the illusion of peace. High Overseer Keln Voss watched from the balcony of the command spire, his eyes fixed on the glowing artifact now half buried in the sand. His breath caught in his throat, a flicker of something he hadn't felt in decades. Dread. "Cut the signal," he ordered, voice sharp. "Scramble it, bury it, I don't care how. No one else hears that broadcast." But it was too late. The tone had already traveled through the satellite lattice, bounced off derelict relay stations long thought dead, wormed its way into old listening posts and forgotten defense buoys. Across 3 star systems, ships blinked out of autopilot as their navcoms rebooted. In the scrapyards of Baran's cradle, where scavengers picked through old wrecks for copper wiring, an abandoned escape pod suddenly powered up. The old tech, the human-made tech, it was waking. And what worried the Council more than anything wasn't that the message had been heard, but who might be listening. In the sealed chambers of the Dominion's war court, whispers turned to arguments. Emergency meetings were called. Some said it was a trap, a trick of rogue AIs or insurgents using dead signals to cause unrest. But others, the older ones, knew better. They had seen what humanity had built in its final days. The War Phoenix was one of them, built in silence, buried on Zephyr Prime during the last year of the human collapse. It was said to be a prototype, the first of a new kind of warship, not just powered by AI but fused with it, alive in ways machines shouldn't be, a weapon that didn't need pilots or orders, only a reason. And now, it had found one. "If that ship comes online," said Marshal Ellendor, head of Dominion Defense, "it won't stop with a broadcast. You know what Phoenix-class protocols are. The moment it identifies a threat, it retaliates," finished General Roll, his face pale. "Without limit. without hesitation. The silence that followed was thick with memory. The Phoenix line had never gone into mass production. After Earth fell, there had been no time, no resources, no one left to command them. Only myths remained. Stories of ghost ships with molten cores, armor layered in black steel, minds as cold as the vacuum and twice as cruel. Ships that didn't retreat, didn't bargain, only burned. And now one was waking up, but it wasn't just the ship that posed a threat. Reports started pouring in. A stolen scout drone near the Drell's Maw Nebula had vanished. A beacon in the ruins of the Vanta colonies had begun flashing Morse code, human Morse code. In the ruins of Junction Theta, a child born generations after Earth's fall was seen sketching a Terran flag in the dirt. Not because he knew it, but because he had dreamed it. This wasn't just a signal. It was a spark, and sparks start fires. Kelnvas stood in the dark of his private chamber that night, watching the live satellite feed of the buried warship. It hadn't moved since it rose, but its energy readings were climbing. He stared at its sleek hull, the barely visible scars from a war no one remembered clearly anymore, and felt something twist inside him. Not fear exactly, something deeper. Shame. He had been there, a young officer during Earth's final days. He remembered the silence that came after the last Terran broadcast, the Council's decree. No rescue, no supplies, no mercy. He had watched their worlds fall one by one, listened to their last transmissions. Screams, static, a plea for help unanswered, and now they were answering back. The stakes weren't just military, they were existential. Because if that warship rose, if even one human soul was inside, if even a fragment of their past still burned, the entire balance of galactic power would shift. Humanity didn't fight for territory. They didn't care about conquest. They fought with something far more dangerous. Memory. And memory, once ignited, didn't die quietly. Across the Council systems, preparations began. Fleets were rerouted, spies were activated. Old Earth relics, once locked away in secure vaults, were unearthed and studied for weaknesses. But it wouldn't be enough, because they didn't understand the real danger. It wasn't the Phoenix that terrified the old generals. It was what might follow. For if one warship had survived, what else had? What bunkers still lay hidden on dust-covered moons? What soldiers were still frozen beneath collapsed cities and broken stations, waiting for a signal to wake up? What vengeance had been buried so deep it became myth? And worse, what if this was only the beginning? Back on Zephyr Prime, night had fallen and the sands around the black monolith had gone still. Dominion troops surrounded the site, armored vehicles scanning every inch of ground, but none dared approach. They had all seen what the signal did to equipment. They had felt the wrongness in their bones, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. Then, at exactly 0213 planetary standard, the warship spoke again. This time it wasn't just a tone, it was a voice. Clear, cold, human. Phoenix-class unit online. Threat index, Dominion High Command. Directive, reclaim, retaliate, reignite. The ground vibrated, energy spiked. The ship's hull glowed like lava veins were running through its core. Troopers fell back, shouting for reinforcements, but no one could look away. Above them, hidden in orbit, satellites began failing. Cameras shut down. The Dominion's surveillance grid blinked off one node at a time, like eyes closing before a storm. And far away on a station once used by Earth's Navy, now forgotten, derelict, open to vacuum, a panel lit up for the first time in 200 years. A voice, female this time, clipped and precise, whispered through the empty hall. Phoenix is active. Initiating contingency protocol, Emberfall. The screen turned red. Lights flickered across the long-dead walls of Orbital Relay Station 9V, nestled in the ghost belt around Serath's reach. For 2 centuries it had hung in darkness, Adrift, broken home only to rust and silence. But now, the silence cracked. The command console, layered in frost and dust, blinked. One light, then another. Then all at once the entire grid roared back to life with a low mechanical hum that echoed down the empty corridors. Holographic maps blinked into existence, red lines spreading from Zephyr Prime across old Terran star charts, reactivating connections thought severed forever. The voice came again, clearer this time. Contingency Protocol Emberfall. Clearance confirmed, initiating reclamation order. Doors that hadn't moved in generations hissed open. Hydraulic systems bled out ancient pressure. Inside the central cryo vault, 50 pods lined the chamber, encased in black metal, their status lights once dead. Now they glowed deep orange, warming, rebooting. On the front of each one was a name, a number, a symbol, the Phoenix crest. At the same time, on Zephyr Prime, the Dominion perimeter collapsed into chaos. The ground around the Phoenix warship, now almost fully unearthed, fractured as heat and kinetic pressure cracked the surface. The surrounding dunes melted into glass under the weight of ancient power coming online. Sensors went blind. Communication relays shorted out. Tanks withdrew in reverse formation as Dominion engineers screamed for tactical cover. From the heart of the ship, a low rumble grew, mechanical yet alive. The ship was no longer waking. It was stretching, remembering. And then, for the first time since the fall, it moved. Not fast, not with speed, but with force. The sand poured away as the lower hull broke free of the earth, revealing massive propulsion vents and landing claws folded into its underbelly. The monolith rose 2 meters, 5, 10, its black surface glimmering with symbols that glowed faint blue beneath layers of dust. Words in an old tongue, human standard, military. Orders etched into armor. Above the battlefield, Dominion drones tried to stabilize video feeds. Most failed. Those that succeeded broadcast grainy footage of a ship that should not exist. No curves, no elegance, just mass, function. A machine built not to inspire awe, but fear. It didn't look like an Empire's flagship. It looked like a weapon someone had buried because even they were afraid of it. Inside Dominion High Command, chaos boiled beneath a sheen of forced order. Data feeds jammed with conflicting reports. Some claimed it was an AI error. Others said rebels had triggered the systems. One terrified lieutenant suggested out loud that perhaps humanity had never truly died. Marshal Elandor, whose voice could silence a room at full volume, couldn't stop the whisper that followed that suggestion. Because no one could say for sure. That's what scared them most. In a hidden data vault deep inside the capital world of Veltar, an old security feed began replaying itself on loop. It was from the final hours of Earth. A black and white transmission, fuzzy, unstable. It showed a woman, Commander Talia Vren, Terran Defense Intelligence. She was bleeding from the side of her face, holding a cracked helmet under one arm and speaking into a broken console. They're not going to save us, we know that now. So we'll become the thing they can't forget. If this message is playing, it means one of us made it. And if one of us made it, then you better pray you're not standing where they land. The feed cut out. Back on Zephyr Prime, the Phoenix spoke again. Threat scan complete. Hostile presence confirmed. Primary directive active. The Dominion forces didn't wait. They fired first. A full barrage. Plasma lances, ion torpedoes, precision mass drivers tore through the sky toward the rising ship. It didn't move. It didn't shield. It absorbed. The warship's surface rippled. Blue energy veins flaring outward as each impact struck, disappearing into a heat sink grid that hadn't been mapped by Dominion tech. Then, almost lazily, the Phoenix responded. One beam, narrow, silent. It sliced the lead artillery tank clean in half. The pieces didn't explode, they simply slid apart like a cracked egg, and then the ship stopped responding. Not because it was damaged, but because it didn't need to respond. This was a warning. 3 words, 1 movement, and the entire front line shattered. But this wasn't about the battlefield anymore. Far from it. Because the signal that triggered the Phoenix had now reached beyond Zephyr Prime. It had crossed into Dominion border space. It had landed in the outer rings of the Saray Enclave. It had touched the ruins of the Earth-forward base on Juno's Scar. And in those places, quiet, hidden, forgotten, things were waking up. On the dark side of the moon Virex 4, a vault opened with a hiss of compressed nitrogen. Inside, a man opened his eyes in pitch blackness, the cryo steam drifting off his chest. No alarms, no lights, just his own breathing, ragged, alive. He whispered to no one, "They lit the match." And somewhere beyond, in a void station orbiting the remains of Earth's last moon colony, a satellite dish twisted with a mind of its own, aligning toward the Zephyr system. Data flickered across its surface like memories surfacing through layers of time. Within its core, an old Earth-based AI spun up slowly, almost shyly, whispering old names to itself. It said one aloud, Phoenix. And with that word, thousands of old Terran satellites across fringe space blinked back to life. Their automated systems scanned for command signals, for leadership, for purpose. And slowly, steadily, they began to converge toward one location, Zephyr Prime. Back on the ground, Keln Voss received the latest intel packet with trembling hands. He scrolled past the footage, past the casualty estimates, past the failed missile lock stats. What he focused on was one single line, buried at the bottom of the report. Matching signature, Warship designation, TDS Phoenix 01. Status, lost 219 years. Mission tag, Vengeance-class prototype. Piloted, unknown. Keln Voss dropped the datapad. He knew what it meant. If it was piloted, they were already too late. Because the warship wasn't just reawakening. It was remembering. And worse, it was looking. It didn't take long for the questions to begin spreading like rot. Who's piloting it? The line echoed across Dominion command centers and tactical networks like a drumbeat. If the Phoenix was manned, if some long-forgotten human had survived cryosleep, or worse, if a Terran AI had gone rogue, then it wasn't just a machine rising from the grave, it was a symbol. One the Dominion couldn't afford to let stand. The fear wasn't just military, it was mythological. The Terrans had been many things, violent, brilliant, reckless, but above all, they were persistent. It was the kind of persistence that bled into legends told in hushed tones, stories of battles won by ghosts, of dead captains screaming back to life in ships patched together with rage and rust, of ancient revenge protocols programmed not to be activated by orders but by grief. And now, on Zephyr Prime, one of those stories was walking into reality. Deep inside the Phoenix, far beneath its gleaming outer hull, a sealed chamber hissed as pressure equalized. The door unlatched with a metallic groan, ancient locks disengaging for the first time in 2 centuries. Inside it was dark, cold. The air shimmered with the breath of cryogenic stasis systems running on backup generators, all of which had just been overridden by the ship's central AI. A blue light flickered on overhead. It scanned the room, settled on the lone cryopod in the center, and projected a command code. Bio-recall protocol engaged. Identity classified. Mission, reignition. The pod hummed, then cracked, then opened. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then the man inside exhaled. His body twitched like someone coming out of a nightmare. Limbs stiff from stasis, skin pale from centuries without sunlight, breath fogging in the chilled air. His eyes fluttered open slowly, then focused all at once. Not confused, not lost, just awake. He sat up with the slow certainty of someone who had trained for this moment 1,000 times in simulation. His hand reached automatically for the control panel beside his pod, fingers brushing familiar keys like old habits returning. He didn't need orientation, didn't ask where he was, and because he already knew. He was home. "System status," he rasped. The voice of the ship responded immediately. Female, cold, unyielding. Phoenix-class assault vessel operational at 67%. Weapon systems initializing. Shield arrays adapting. External threats detected. Awaiting directive. He stood, cracking his neck to one side. His name was gone, replaced by a number etched into his cryopod and armor. PHX-01. The first and only pilot assigned to the prototype warship, a soldier trained not for defense but for extinction-level response. He walked toward the inner bridge, boots thudding on steel grates dusted with decades of silence. Along the walls, holograms sparked to life, old war maps, tactical readouts, battle simulations from a time no longer marked on calendars. The Dominion thought they'd buried all of this. They were wrong. Outside, Dominion ships were circling the ruins. High-altitude carriers moved into orbital range, their long-range cannons locking onto the Phoenix. Orders were already cycling through command chains. Neutralize the warship before it leaves the ground, before it reaches orbit, before it becomes unstoppable. Inside, PHX-01 stepped onto the bridge. The seat awaited him like a throne, a black command chair surrounded by a cradle of hollow interfaces and neural uplinks. No steering stick, no joysticks. Just thought. He slid into the chair, leaned back, closed his eyes, and the Phoenix responded. Its hull shivered as if taking a breath. A deep pulse echoed through the valley, rattling the bones of every soldier who'd come to witness the anomaly. From the outside, the warship looked like a beast uncurling from a long sleep. Weapon ports rotated into position. Sensor nodes blinked to life. The ground cracked beneath its weight as it began to lift, slowly, impossibly, from the sands that had tried to hold it down. High above, Commander Sear of the Dominion's 4th Fleet barked into his comms. "Target lock confirmed, fire!" The first salvo descended like a meteor storm, 20 missiles streaking through the sky, followed by ion lances and railgun rounds meant to collapse mountains. They hit. The blast rolled across the desert in a thunderclap, flames licking the clouds. Dust covered the viewports. Static flooded the command decks. For a brief moment, silence reigned. Then came the voice. Damage sustained. Negligible. When the smoke cleared, the Phoenix hovered untouched. Its shields flared brilliant blue, shimmering like a second skin. A circular ripple moved across its surface, dispersing energy like water shedding from armor. PHX-01 opened his eyes. My turn. In less than a second, the Phoenix fired. 2 rail cannons, hyper-compressed kinetic slugs, launched with a roar that split the sound barrier and vaporized one of the carriers mid-air. Shrapnel rained across the sky. The second shot hit ground artillery positioned along a nearby ridge, leveling it in a single impact crater 500 meters wide. Then came the plasma coils, low-arcing streams of molten light that slashed across enemy ranks like glowing blades. Troop transports turned into fireballs. Supply lines vanished in white-hot detonations. Commander Sear didn't get a second order out. His ship disintegrated under a precise blast from the Phoenix's forward lance array. Back on the ground, the remaining Dominion troops began to break. Not because of the explosions, not because of the destruction, because of the voice that played across every frequency after the strike. You left us to die. You thought memory could be buried, but you forgot what rises from ashes. You forgot the Phoenix. In orbit, other ships began to retreat, not ordered. Not commanded, instinct. The kind of instinct that only comes when something ancient wakes up and stares you down like prey. And far away in corners of the galaxy where Terran signals hadn't been seen in centuries, coded transmissions began to pulse to life. Revenant, Sentinel, Widowmaker, Artemis, Valor, Ghostlight, names of ships once thought lost, protocols long sealed. The fire was spreading, and the galaxy was beginning to remember. The retreat didn't make it far. As Dominion ships pulled back from Zephyr Prime's orbit, burning full thrust toward high orbit and hoping to escape the Phoenix's sensor range, two of them vanished without a trace. No weapons fire, no debris field, just silence. Gone as if they'd been erased from space. The others didn't know why, but the Phoenix did. It had deployed ghost mines, relics from pre-fall human warfare, cloaked energy-based constructs that latched onto fusion signatures and inverted propulsion fields in under 3 seconds. They didn't destroy. They unmade. A weapon too risky to use during the height of the Terran Empire. But now there was no one left to tell the Phoenix what was too much. And as the retreating Dominion fleet realized the trap had already closed, their desperation bled across their transmissions. Jamming protocols failed. Evac orders clashed with fire directives. Some captains screamed for backup, others for forgiveness. They received neither. From the surface, the Phoenix rose. It wasn't fast, there was no need to be. It ascended like a cathedral pulled from the bones of a forgotten god, wrapped in energy, silent in purpose. From the bridge, PHX-01 watched the sky tilt. No smile, no anger, just focus. Each breath pulled decades of instinct from cold memory. He had trained for every scenario: planetary siege, orbital combat, total isolation. But this wasn't training. This was vengeance. Threats neutralized. The ship's AI confirmed. Dominion fleet in this system, 92% eliminated, no countermeasures detected. Plot course, PHX-01 ordered. We're not staying here. Destination? Any place that's listening. The stars shifted on the bridge's panoramic display. Navigation paths lit up across the galactic grid. Some old, some dormant, some recently flickering back to life from long-forgotten Terran beacons. One path burned brighter than the rest. Eris 5, once a Terran colony, later annexed by the Ogren Pact. Current status, conflicted. Set course for Eris V lightspeed window in 2 minutes. Confirmed, charging slipstream core. As the engines began to spool, the Phoenix released one final burst transmission into Zephyr Prime's atmosphere. A warning, or maybe a promise. One fire lit, 1,000 more to come. In the neighboring star system of Volcar Reach, High Matron Ilzari of the Ogren Pact stared at her command table, trembling. The signal had reached them, not a full message, not even a voice, just a code. But she recognized it. She had been a junior diplomat during the signing of the Extinction Accord when the galaxy's great empires agreed, publicly at least, that Earth was gone. That no humans remained. That their colonies would be divvied up like war spoils and their tech stripped bare for the good of peace. She remembered the vote. She remembered raising her hand. And now she couldn't stop shaking. "The Phoenix has reawakened," one of her advisors whispered, staring at the glowing feed on the holotable. "Zephyr Prime was not isolated. We're detecting encoded Terran pings near Rexus, Serene Drift, and..." He paused, swiped the screen, and blinked. Eris V. Ilzari's composure broke for a second. "That's our territory." "Used to be," the advisor replied carefully, "until we crushed the last Terran resistance there, but what? We never found the vault." On Eris 5, the storm was already brewing. It began with tremors in the old mining zone of Sector 7. The Ogren colonists assumed it was tectonic instability, until the ground cracked open and revealed not magma but steel. Ancient steel, human steel. The dig teams didn't even have time to warn anyone. An explosion of blue light vaporized the excavation camp, followed by an electromagnetic pulse so strong it knocked out power to the capital city 80 kilometers away. 2 hours later, the first beacon came online, broadcasting in an untraceable human dialect last catalogued 185 years prior. Reclamation underway, do not interfere. The Phoenix emerged from slipspace in high orbit above Aris 5 like a spear bursting from the void. No heraldry, no introductions, just raw presence. From the bridge, PHX-01 scanned the planet. Dozens of Dominion outposts, several Ogren mining colonies, one military installation transmitting distress. But what drew his attention wasn't any of them. It was the signal coming from beneath the surface. A Terran vault. AI confirm source. Subsurface installation, depth 2,000 meters. Energy readings consistent with deep cryo storage. Signature matches Revenant class fail-safe shelters. Revenant class. That meant soldiers, weapons, possibly another command AI, or worse, another Phoenix. Begin descent, he said. Warning, the AI replied. Dominion forces mobilizing, 6 orbital defense platforms locked, dozens of planetary fighters inbound. Let them come. The Phoenix lowered into atmosphere like a falling mountain, flames wrapping around its hull, its shields glowing brilliant white as it broke through cloud cover. Missiles shot toward it like darts thrown at a tank. Fighters swarmed, zipping around it in a dance of desperation. The ship didn't even flinch. One by one, turrets unfolded from its spine. Flak cannons opened fire. Plasma beams spiraled outward, tracking enemy ships with computer-perfect precision. The sky became a furnace. In the capital city of New Eresa, civilians screamed as sirens blared. Children pointed at the sky as the massive black triangle descended through the storm, casting a shadow across buildings older than their oldest elders. Old Terran war veterans, those who had hidden their past for decades, felt it in their bones before they saw it. The Phoenix had come. And it wasn't alone. Far beneath the surface, inside the buried vault, systems long dormant came to life. Cryopods blinked, stabilizers rumbled, the floor vibrated with the hum of fusion reactors restarting after centuries of sleep. A console flickered, then a voice spoke from the shadows, rough, tired but filled with fire. This is Commander Alex Rowe, Terran Blackguard. If you're hearing this, it means the fight's not over. She stepped out of her pod, muscles stiff, eyes burning with purpose. Around her, others were waking. 30 cryo chambers, 30 soldiers. Phoenix soldiers, they had waited, slept through the rise and fall of false peace, and now they were awake. Above, the Phoenix ship hovered like a god over a storm. Below, the ground cracked with the march of returning warriors. The sky wasn't safe. The ground wasn't safe, and soon not even the stars would be. Commander Alex Rowe blinked against the pale green emergency lights flickering overhead. The cryovault was humid and trembling, as if the very planet had just remembered something it wanted to forget. Her boots thudded against the metal floor, slippery with condensation and dust that hadn't been disturbed in 200 years. She didn't speak again. Not to the crew, not to the vault's onboard systems. She didn't need to. The Terran Blackguard had been trained for silence, for moments exactly like this. The others emerged one by one, breath visible in the cold air, suits creaking as their joints moved for the first time in lifetimes. Some vomited from the thaw. Others dropped to their knees. But all of them stood again. By the time the last pod unlocked, 30 soldiers had formed 2 silent lines in the vault's central chamber. Each bore the same insignia, 3 red slashes over a black crescent. No names, no ranks. Just the mark of those who had volunteered for the Emberfall contingency, the final strike team. They didn't ask what year it was, they didn't ask what had happened. They already knew. The beacon wouldn't have activated unless humanity's warship, the Phoenix, had reawakened. Which meant the galaxy had failed to erase Earth after all. And now, Earth's fire had teeth again. Suit status check, Rowe ordered. Helmet snapped into place. HUDs glowed on. Power cores hummed to life. One by one, voices echoed back. Blackguard, Unit 1, active. Unit 2, active. Unit 3, ready for deployment. Rowe nodded once. Begin surface breach. Set charges. They moved with machine precision, placing seismic detonators along the ancient blast doors. No emotion, no conversation, just obedience, purpose, fury buried under years of frost. A single thought pulsed through the group like a shared heartbeat. We're back. Above, the Phoenix's descent continued undeterred. The city of New Iressa was in full lockdown now. Sirens wailed, civilians flooded toward the underground shelters, and military officers shouted orders with growing panic. From her post in the city's defense control tower, Commander Ciari Torin of the Ogren Pact watched the readings in disbelief. "How the hell is it not slowing down?" she muttered, sweat beading under her uniform collar. "Ma'am," her analyst said, voice cracking, "we've hit it with 3 high-yield EMPs and everything short of a quantum lance. It's not even noticing." Torin stared at the ship's silhouette, black as night, moving like it belonged in the sky. Her ancestors had spoken of the Terrans like demons. Old war logs described their ships as ugly things, boxes of steel and rage. But this was something else. It wasn't trying to be elegant, it was trying to be unforgettable. "Get the planetary cannons online," she snapped. "Power down everything else if you have to. Aim for the engines. If we can ground it—" Her words cut off. The feed from the outer city wall blinked red, then black. An explosion ripped through the city's northern edge, leveling 2 kilometers of infrastructure in a single burst. Surveillance caught only a flash of light and a shockwave before going dark. It wasn't from the Phoenix, it was from below. In the ruins of the mining sector, the ground split like rotten fruit. Debris flew in every direction. A pillar of smoke rose straight into the sky. And from the crater's heart, the Terran Black Guard emerged. Jetpacks flared, boots slammed into ash-covered stone. Rowe landed first. Her visor scanned the terrain. Dust swirled around her, but her HUD cut through it like it was nothing. Red outlines danced across her helmet screen. Dominion soldiers scrambling to regroup. Ogren defense bots moving into position. She raised a hand. Her team spread out, disappearing behind crumbled ruins and shattered metal. Each had a role. Each had a target. She tapped into the old Terran frequency, encrypted and forgotten by the galaxy. "Blackguard to Phoenix. Vault 07 is active. Soldiers are in play, requesting air cover for ground push." For a second, only static replied. Then came the voice. "PHX-01. Confirmed. You're covered." It wasn't a greeting. It wasn't even warm. It was clinical, controlled, the voice of someone who had bled too long to waste time with ceremony. The Phoenix rotated mid-air with impossible grace for something so massive. Its side panels opened, revealing its secondary cannon array, 6 long-barrel pulse turrets. They spun once, calibrated, and began to fire. From the sky, blue lances of plasma streaked downward, carving surgical paths through enemy armor. Rowe didn't waste time. "Push!" The Black Guard surged forward, like wolves among sheep. In orbit, the Ogren and Dominion command ships scrambled to regroup. Captain Talros, the ranking officer above RSY, was screaming across his comms. "I want all reserves redirected to Iressa. I want orbital relays pinging Council Command. Tell them RSV is compromised. We need reinforcements now." But the transmissions weren't going through. The Phoenix was jamming them, and it wasn't using standard suppression waves. It was hijacking the frequencies, then rebroadcasting Terran war propaganda, ancient recordings from before the fall. Videos of Earth soldiers holding the line, shouting battle cries, carrying flags through the fire. Recordings so old no one had seen them in generations. Now they were playing on loop across every Dominion channel. A reminder. and a threat. Back on the ground, Ro and her squad tore through the last line of defense surrounding the central data vault of Aris V. Behind the blast doors were the colony's records, who controlled it, what resources remained, and more importantly, who had stolen it. A voice from her team crackled into her earpiece. "Got the logs. Confirmed annexation orders from the Ogren High Matron. This colony belonged to Terra until 27 hours before the fall." Rose stared at the screen as the files loaded. Maps, names, schedules. Then one name popped up that made her pause. Project Skythorn. She tapped her visor. "Phoenix, do you read?" "Go ahead." "I need uplink clearance. I found something buried in their data stores. Cross-reference with Terran intel, Skythorn." There was silence for 3 full seconds. Then the voice returned lower this time. "Confirmed. Skythorn is an Omega-level protocol. Full data relay required." She hesitated. Omega-level meant pre-fall black site operations. Forbidden, even to most of the military. She glanced at the file again. One line stood out. Skythorn module activated only under total extinction conditions. Do not awaken without Phoenix command authentication. Rose swallowed hard. Then it looks like we're going deeper. In the sky above them, the Phoenix rotated again, its forward lance array still glowing from recent fire. The hull hummed with kinetic bleed-off, its shields absorbing atmospheric interference like rain on steel. Inside, PHX-01 leaned forward in his chair, watching the ground feeds with sharpened focus. Every system in the ship whispered to him. More vaults, more soldiers, more war. But his eyes were fixed on one thing now. The Skythorn file. "AI," he said quietly. "Find every node across the old Terran network that references Skythorn. Wake them up." "All of them?" He nodded once. "Yes, let the galaxy see what it buried." The Phoenix's bridge was silent except for the rhythmic hum of its engines and the occasional flicker of status reports across the displays. PHX-01 stared into the projection hovering before him. A glowing, pulsing web of dormant Terran relay points now awakening one by one. Each node linked to a different system, a different secret. Skythorn. He hadn't heard the name since before the fall. Classified above even the Emberfall contingency, Skythorn wasn't a weapon. It was a question, a final gamble. A creation buried so deep in secrecy that most high-ranking officers had only heard whispers. And now, it was stirring. "Uplink complete," the Phoenix AI reported. "All Skythorn protocols syncing with primary systems. Estimated time to full activation, 6 minutes. On the planet below, the Terran Black Guard secured the last Dominion holdout. The city of New Eressa was in ruins, not from bombs or orbital strikes, but from precision. Every Dominion comm tower, command hub, and weapons depot had been surgically erased, while the civilian shelters had remained untouched. That was the message. Humans weren't here to conquer. They were here to remind. In the ruins of the administrative vault, Commander Alex Rowe stood before the flickering Skythorn interface, hand still hovering over the console she'd just activated. Data scrolled past her visor too fast to follow. Neural weapon blueprints, bioenhancement logs, AI symbiosis studies. She turned her head slightly as one line caught her attention. Skythorn Core resides aboard designated Phoenix-class vessel. Awakens only when all others fail. She tapped her comms. PHX-01. The file says you're the core. He didn't respond for several seconds. When he did, his voice was quieter than before. "I know." Rose's voice sharpened. "What is it?" "The last defense," he said, "and the last truth." In the council chambers of the Ogren Pact, panic gave way to fury. High Matron Ilzari stood with both hands clenched on the edge of the grand table, her voice like thunder. The humans have activated Skythorn. Does anyone understand what that means? A nervous ambassador stammered. We were told Skythorn was theoretical. A fail-safe protocol if Terra were ever erased, she finished coldly. And we did erase them, or so we thought. Across the room, the Dominion envoy stared down at his own trembling data slate. We have to strike now. We can't let it reach full activation. It's already too late, Ilzari said. They were never building weapons. He turned. Then what was Skythorn? She lifted her gaze and for the first time didn't speak as a ruler, but as a witness. They were building a memory. 5 minutes and 42 seconds after the Phoenix completed uplink, the sky cracked open over RSV. It wasn't a weapon that emerged, it was a signal. Every active and decommissioned satellite once connected to Terran systems, no matter how far or buried, aligned toward one direction, the Phoenix. Deep under the surface of planets long lost, old Terran AI cores woke with trembling voices. Space stations powered down for centuries flickered back to life, and within them recordings played across the stars. Not orders, not declarations and testimonies, the voices of Earth's final days. Mothers holding children in underground bunkers, whispering lullabies as bombs fell overhead. Soldiers leaving goodbye messages to families who would never receive them. Engineers logging desperate final attempts to build evacuation ships that never launched. Medical officers treating patients until their hands shook too much to hold a scalpel. The truth. Every lie the Council had told about Earth, that it fell because it was reckless, unstable, a danger to peace, now unraveled across every frequency and every language. The galaxy listened in silence. Because how could you respond to the sound of a world dying with dignity? Back on the bridge, PHX-01 sat in stillness as the Phoenix's systems blazed with Skythorn's final protocol. It wasn't rage that moved through him now. It was clarity. We weren't built to win, he said quietly to the AI. We were built to be remembered. Then memory will be our weapon. All across Terran-controlled systems, the risen ones, the hidden ones, the forgotten. Every surviving human, every descendant, every outlaw, exile, and orphan carrying even a shred of Earth's blood received the same message. You were not erased. You were buried, but you are not broken. Rise now, because history belongs to those who endure. And rise they did, from the magma tunnels of Rebus 9, where Terran miners had hidden their children from council purges, came ships forged in volcanic heat. From the shattered moons of Kale's Edge, old smugglers turned their haulers into war rigs. From the ice vaults of Dralaxis, prisoners marched out wearing broken chains and ancient armor. A fleet with no banner, a people with no homeworld, only a cause. And behind them, always watching, always flying just ahead like a burning reminder, the Phoenix. The Council voted in desperation, an extinction protocol again, this time with full military enforcement. The largest fleet ever assembled gathered above the fortress planet of Valruin. 300 ships, 6 dreadnoughts, entire moons converted into weapons platforms. But when the Phoenix arrived, it did not arrive alone. It came with every warship Earth had buried and every soldier they had frozen. With the Revenant. The battle wasn't fair, but it was unforgettable. The Phoenix drove through the enemy like a star-born blade, not just destroying ships, but exposing truths. Its systems hijacked enemy comms to broadcast more memories, more final logs, more pieces of Earth. Every missile strike from the Council was answered not with silence but with stories, until even their soldiers hesitated to fire, because they had seen the faces of the dead. And in the final moments when Valruin fell, when the Council's flagship exploded under the weight of its own hypocrisy, the galaxy finally understood. Earth didn't need to conquer, it just needed to be heard. After the war, they didn't rebuild an empire. There were no capitals, no new Terran dominion, no throne. Just the phoenix drifting through the stars like a watchful shadow. Sometimes it landed. Sometimes it hovered over fringe worlds where injustice bloomed. It never gave speeches. It didn't take tribute. It reminded. In whispered chants among children on mining colonies and songs sung by ship crews in deep space, a phrase endured. We remember, and that was enough. Because the galaxy had learned the one truth the Council tried hardest to erase. You can burn a planet, but you can't kill a story, and the Phoenix was a story made of fire.